Resident Evil 2. Cool game. It's good. Some parts I didn't like, but I kind of looked at it with open eyes because I never played the original. So yeah, for me it was cool because before this I played 4 and 5 and 6. I think even 7? I'm not sure. Umbrella Corps. I mean, I was into it enough. I didn't play all of them, obviously, up to this point, but I liked Resident Evil enough to be like, hey, this is my chance to... That's why these remakes are made, because there's a lot of people that may have missed it back in the day, and sure, it's still technically playable today, but it's just so old at this point that I didn't even bother. I was like, dude, I like Resident Evil, but I'm not gonna play like an old game, and I don't know. I don't really like try to like live in the past too much or chase after nostalgia, and you know, that's why they do these, is for someone exactly like me who likes the series and the brand, the franchise, but unfortunately just missed out on the original, the OG. Which is nice too, because it is a remake, it's not just a remaster. Yes, they changed a lot of things. I know that some people, you know, can give remakes a lot of shit because like, oh, they took this out, or they blah blah blah. You know, who cares? If you want the original game, go back and play that. This is for new audiences as well as old audiences, so you know, it did exactly what it needed to do. I had a great time. As the game looks so good, it plays good. And when you think of like 4, 5, and 6, for example, the latest kind of 3 of the first 6, the more modern stuff-ish, PS2/PS3 generation. Like PS1 games they're just so old now. A little too old. So getting this was nice because it was such a nice change of pace from all that I was used to from Resident Evil. So this kind of really shined a new light on how to look at the series as a whole and where it is today, and really making use of that new RE engine. Yeah, I think 7 did come out before this, because I remember that's when they introduced the RE engine, and then they really made use of it here specifically. Like even RE7 looked great, it played great, but it was so different. They really took you out of what we define Resident Evil as, and this was like zombies. It was just perfect. The Resident Evil 2 sequels are good. Like I love sequels because they took what made success, made it better, made it bigger, made it cooler. And this is my boy Leon. Like dude, I started with 4, so like obviously with Leon kind of being one of the main characters in this game, I'd say he's the main character, but hey, yeah, it was just too good to pass up. when I first played this, I was like, I was in a good place. I was like, dude, zombies, survival horror, yes, Resident Evil, Capcom, everything looks great. It was such a good time. And that's just the game as a whole. Specifically, it's like, yeah, same inventory system as 7. Same, like, you know, very clicky, nice, clean, simple UI. The UI though is something that kind of does bother me a little bit, because it's just really basic but nice. There's just no like character or personality in it. And it's kind of important because that's what you're dealing with half the time. Granted, you get the game. Like, I'm not trying to like bring down the UI and the inventory management and things like that too much. It's just it was very basic. It's very lame. But you know, inventory is there just to be there. I think they kind of know that too, and they kind of went with that as like, hey, we don't need to make the UI like this big thing. But I think that's what made a lot of the games so good, was all the different UIs from all the games. You know, yeah, I did dabble. I didn't finish RE1 before this. Didn't finish RE0, but I played those. I don't remember if they were before or after I played this, but yeah, this game was just really good, really clean. You can kind of tell it's a remake though, because of like, they are taking something so old and kind of, yes, it's redone, but it has that remake formula where things do seem a little bit off. I don't know if it's because you can compare it to its original so much to a point, or the fact that this is just kind of how remakes are done. They take such old models and renders, artwork, and try to make it into this whole new... It's almost like you take the old game and you splash some gold and silver paint on it and it's a remake. I don't know, like, as good as this game is, I can see through it too. Like, it's just it's not an original IP, it's not an original game, it's a remake. And I kind of noticed the same thing with Final Fantasy VII Remake, for example. It's just, there's always this something is just off to me. Like, remakes in general don't really speak to me the way that I think they should. Because I'm sitting here so thankful because of the fact that these games were around when I was alive as a kid. But then now I'm getting them as an adult, and I'm like, you know, I really appreciate what they're trying to do here, but at the same time, I'm kind of bummed that I didn't experience the original stuff, and I'm not willing to do that. And it's not that I'm trying to compare them necessarily, it's more like, I don't know, it's something really hard to pinpoint, because yes, there's something off, but I don't know what it is. But at the same time, I kind of just sit back and accept the fact that this is how it is, and kind of go with it. And I'm not really complaining. Are there things to complain about? Yeah, but I'm not really like sitting here. You know, I don't know if it's a good thing, the fact that I didn't play the original, or it's a bad thing. I don't know. So if this is what I get, this is what I get, and I accept that and roll with it. But it's just confusing, because it's like, well, could I have liked this better for some reason? Do I like it more than I think that I do? I don't know. But regardless, it is just a good game overall, so there's really nothing to say too negatively about the simple fact that it is a thing and it exists. Because the thing with remakes is it has a chance to overshine and overthrow their predecessor. This is supposed to be its successor, ultimately. So, it does have a chance to do that, but at the same time, I feel like somewhere in between everything, it kind of slips. I don't know. Yeah, the cutscenes are pretty sweet.
Yeah, Leon Kennedy. You are?
Claire. Claire Redfield.
Live around here?
No. I'm looking for my brother. He's a cop too.
Well, it's a good thing we found each other.
It's very dark, very gritty, very rainy, very polished. Everyone looks great, especially on a new gen console. Or just, you know, on a good PC, either way. I don't know. Because yeah, this game was meant to look really good. And that's exactly what it does. It's just the thing with, I don't know, like it's almost like watching a reboot or like playing a reboot, or there's just been so many recently that and they're still coming too. Like, I don't know. I get why games have to be remade because they've aged so much, and it's kind of one of those things where it's not as easy to just kind of, you know, I don't know if there's like a master copy, like a gold record, or like, I don't really know how they do these things the way that they do. I don't know the process, but you know, I'm sure there's a lot of work that goes into it, obviously, but I don't know. It always seems like this kind of cheesy, awkward, kind of uncanny thing. Like they're trying so hard to make it look like the fact that it's not this old thing and plays like this old thing, so much to a point where it's almost trying to be so new and too new. The fact that when I play these things, or watch them for that matter, it's like, was this something that was meant to come out today? Was this something that could have came out earlier? It could have came out later? I don't know. But yeah. But the cutscenes, they're really nice. They really push the story along and the gameplay. You know, it's good to be in Raccoon City. It's good to see characters you're familiar with, especially from the movies. I like the movies. There's just so much to appreciate. There's so much eye candy, and everywhere you go, it's addicting. It's a gameplay loop that really keeps you going. What's the next enemy? What's the next engagement gonna be like? What's the next weapon I'm gonna get? The next item? The next puzzle? I think it's an easy game. I think it's definitely not as hard as the older ones, and yeah, it is newer, obviously, so like they are holding your hand a little bit more. It doesn't have that classic Resident Evil feel to it, although it does, because yeah, it is too. I don't know, I think with every Resident Evil game, they've definitely chosen a very unique, specific, special direction with each game, with each entry, and I don't know. It's always kind of a hit or miss in some way or another with each game, in my opinion, but I like to look at these games very broadly and very not narrow-minded, and the big picture of it all and the overall delivery, and I don't know, you could almost argue, you can look at it as like a cash grab, you can look at it as like, you know, just a simple Resident Evil revitalization. I don't know, I think there's a lot of reasons why these games come out when they do, why they do, how it happened. You know, were people asking for it? There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes that we may not know about unless we're maybe looking it up, but even still, you're so limited to what kind of information you can actually find. You know, unless you're literally talking to the developers themselves, especially like off camera or off the record or whatever. But hey, I mean, they wanted Resident Evil to come back, and this is how it happened. I think with 7, they really kind of kicked it off. I think it was a nice pilot, a nice like entry point to what they're kind of this modern day and age agenda of what they're planning on doing with Resident Evil nowadays, today, yesterday, tomorrow. So yeah, it's good shit. You got you know, different playthroughs you can do. There's a customization, costumes. I don't know, there's a lot to the game. It's just nice to play. There's really no other easier, simple way to kind of simplify this experience. I love the music. The music was really good. You can even listen to the old classic music, which is a lot better. Actually, it's a lot more scarier and a lot more 90s, 2000s, right? And I always love seeing games and movies, for that matter, come out today. And you get you have all this like 90s tech, all the big big computers and phones. It's just great. I just love seeing that. Like, hey, I was there. Barely made it out of all that, but man. Yeah. I don't know, it's just fun. It's a good like time-lapse game. You get to kind of go back in time. But it's something that's very recent. I don't know, it's just cool. It really brings out a lot of different kind of like emotions or feelings, or gets your endorphins going and your serotonin, and I don't know, you're like nostalgic one minute, you're like living in the present one minute, you're eye candy the next minute, ear candy the next minute. I don't know, it's just fun. It's just a really good game. I think they made a staple in the gaming community when this came out. You know, they're like, hey, we're Resident Evil and we're here to stay, and we're gonna really keep pumping out what we're doing and do good things here, and which is kind of unfortunate in a way because they're not working on other Capcom stuff nearly as much, I think, but which can kind of suck because they do make some good stuff outside of Resident Evil. And people only know Capcom, I would say, mostly from Resident Evil, if anything, if not Mega Man, I guess. I don't play that, but you know, they got other good stuff too. It's just unfortunately Resident Evil kind of takes over, and but it makes sense though. Capcom, like a bullet shell. Capcom, Resident Evil, guns. I don't know. It's their baby, and they treat it well, and I can respect that. I think every game studio has that one game where, you know, that's just kind of their thing, and that's just how it is, and that they really, because I get wanting to show everything a lot of love, but at least they realize, like, hey, you know, this is what thrives our business. This is what gets us the exposure that we need as a studio and as a company, as a business, and that's what they do. But unfortunately, that's just kind of where it's all kind of ever gone to, I feel like, for a long time now, actually, is the fact that people like Resident Evil. People are gonna buy it, no matter what. It's you know, the more these keep coming out, it's like, holy shit, dude. There's probably a very big majority of people that own every Resident Evil game. If not, they've played it. They've paid for it. Jesus, man. I think they need to, like, chill out a little bit. But they also realize, like, hey, there's a lot of competition out there. There's a lot of other games that do keep coming out, and we gotta really... It's a competition, and they gotta compete with other stuff. when they realize that people are playing all these games, they know that people could be playing Resident Evil. They work really hard. But these are almost basically at this point becoming like a Call of Duty thing where it feels like they're coming out yearly. So it is kind of weird in that sense, but I'm not really complaining either. I mean, shit, I'd probably rather play Resident Evil than most games, but you know, I feel like the only people who are really supporting that daily kind of thing with these games are, you know, the speedrunners and whatnot. Yeah, the gameplay is pretty fun. It's a little wonky, especially if you're playing on console. I'd say even on PC as well, to be honest, because the whole game just feels like you're invincible, like you can do anything, you can shoot anything exactly where you want it every single time, no problem. You're a boss, you're a master, you're really good and skilled. But really, the reality is, between the reticle doing what it does, you know, hopefully you have your controls nice and the way you want it. You can adjust the depth of field or field of view or whatever it is, which helps me personally. You can change your reticle color, which is nice. Anytime I get to change my reticle to green or something, I'll do it in a heartbeat. You know, your sensitivity's good. But yeah, between the gun sway and the reticle thing, what it does, it really goes in and out. And the enemies just doing their awkward movements, it's something you definitely have to get used to, and it does become a skill thing at some point, but it can be kind of awkward. Especially if you've played this for your first time, or like I've played it a number of times by now, but or especially if you're new to the Resident Evil series in general, which is kind of sad, but I mean, hey, yeah, I've seen it personally too, like, you're gonna have some difficulty, and it does take a minute to get down, but once you have it down, you have it down, and that's what's gonna be able to carry you throughout the rest of the game. There's a lot of games, but sure, it's just basic knowledge, it's just common sense. relaxed and chilled, like, hey, this is where you belong, it's comfortable and cozy. But then as you start playing, it's like, oh, okay, this is no joke. You just get into it, it's just so cinematic and so good, and this is a remake, but this is what started all of this. Like, as good and as original and classic as the first game, for example, is, you know, I think this definitely gave people a better and bigger idea of what the hell Resident Evil even is. What is it doing? Why? Where? When? All these things. And that's exactly what 2 specifically does, is really introduce you to the world as a whole, versus, like, I think in 1, it was very secluded. They only told you so much, they only gave you so much to work with and go on. Which is how those things can go. They pick one specific scenario, one setting, one set of characters, whatever, and they kind of do that. But then, anytime a sequel comes out, for that matter, I think or it's like a choice thing, like, did they cover all that in the first game? Kind of, yes, here, maybe so. It depends what it is, too. But, yeah, here was just really good to kind of get to know the game a lot better. Shit, if I started this as my first Resident Evil, or at the very least if I played this before 1 for some reason, the 1 remaster, remake, whatever it is, which is a funny comparison to how they approached RE2 remake. I'm not even gonna go there, but yeah, I think they gave 1 the treatment that it deserved, and that works and worked and is working even now. But you gotta think they probably chose this specific direction with 2, right? Because it's like, okay, well, we did something with 1. Let's not do that again with 2, because they tried it. Did it work? I'm not really honestly sure. I'd say so, because it still really covers the pre-rendered backgrounds, and it just very felt like the classic stuff that they've always done. And what I originally liked Resident Evil 4, not Resident Evil 4, but like, I play 4, 5, 6, all these newer stuff like this too. You got the new modern stuff and the old classic stuff, and I'm sorry, but like, as good as the new modern stuff is, the old classic stuff is just so much better and cooler and nicer, but in its own way. It's so hard to compare these games, or make a list of the top 10, or do some sort of ranking, because they've almost done something to a point with every game where it's kind of hard to do that. And I don't know if that was on purpose or what, but you know, I think what they were going for is, we want you to like all the games, not just one of them or 2 of them, but all of them. And funny enough, I think that's kind of what they went for in a way with the movies as well, was the fact that, like, hey, I think the movies are a little more concrete and kind of stuck with this whole thing along the way, the live action. But each one is kind of its own thing in its own way too, which is kind of cool, right? And obviously there's the CGI movies where they stuck with that originality. They're always evolving and adapting and going back and forth and keeping it fresh and alive, and that's why they do as many different things as they do, is because they realize, like, as a franchise down the road, people are gonna want this license or whatever ends up happening, and they're gonna want to. It's like watching a bunch of DC movies, like animated movies, live action. Like, they know that, like, hey, these are the characters we have, this is how they're interpreted, whatever. But with each game, each movie, there's gonna be something different each time, right? And they were smart enough to not emphasize too much on the fact that, hey, this is how things have to be. We can mix it up a little bit. I mean, granted, they do so much of the same stuff throughout that they do keep it very much intact as far as the world goes. But with each game, each movie, they're all so different and so like unique in their own way, and I think that's what they're geniuses if you think about it. Because they know too much of a good thing can be a bad thing, so they're like, hey, let's fucking mix it up a bit, right? So yeah, for whoever doesn't like RE2 Remake or anything Resident Evil for that matter, I think that's something to really consider, is the fact that you gotta respect that they've made these decisions and choices for a reason, and we just kind of have to kind of roll with it and accept the fact that this is how it is. And be okay with it, be more than okay with it, because that's how we can keep getting more and more and more. Like, don't let the franchise die, don't give it too much hate, because it's really good stuff, it's really great. I want more of it. Keep doing what y'all are doing, and let's just enjoy the fact that we get Resident Evil. I don't know. I think this particularly, out of all the Resident Evils, is like such a good game in the series. But I think it can really start to stir up your mind a bit about just Resident Evil as a whole, and kind of really get your mind flowing a bit, and hopefully it's in like the best way possible that it can. Because even with the faults that I found in the game, and you know, I don't really look at it too much in depth like that and focus too much on the negative, or it's just really good. Everything Resident Evil is great. And I will continue to defend everything that they do until the end of time. But yes, Resident Evil 2.